Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my first year as a foster parent. Now I know this video is a little bit overdue because really it's been like 6 months past a year since I started fostering, and even longer than that if you want to count the licensing process. But I thought I would just kind of make this video to share some of the things that surprised me kind of in my first year of foster care, like things that were different than what maybe I expected going into it. I hope this video will be useful to those of you who are going into foster care so you can kind of know what things might surprise you or might be unexpected for you as you go into this journey. That is definitely the intent of my channel, is to spread resources for foster parents out there like you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, my name is Autumn Rene, and I would love to have you subscribe and like these videos so you can get on the journey and see all the things that happen here in foster care land. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump into it. If you see me looking over here, it's because I wrote a list of the things I want to talk about in this video. I have 15 things I'm going to share with you guys, and I didn't want to forget them. So if you see me looking over here, I'm using my cheat sheet. Don't judge me. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about was caseworkers. Now, I feel like caseworkers and CPS get like a really bad rep, social workers, whatever you want to call them. I feel like they have this reputation of being unreliable, never getting back to you, not having the best interest of the kids at heart, those kinds of things. And I just want to say, like, that has not been my experience at all. I have had a wonderful, wonderful experience with every person I have worked with from CPS. My personal FAD worker is amazing. My child's caseworker is amazing. Any like attorneys, anybody we've worked with really throughout this whole case has been great and like on top of it and like responds right away. And I've just had really good luck with that. I'm not saying that you can't get a bad social worker. I'm sure just like any other profession, there's plenty out there that don't do a good job. But I just wanted to go ahead and make a little shout out here because I really had a great experience with everyone so far. And, you know, I think that sometimes people get a bad rep for not always the right reasons. So definitely keep an open mind when you start working with a new caseworker, a new social worker, because there really are some great ones out there. Okay, my number 2 thing is going to be how much like your child's case will change as the course of they're with you. Like my son, like the first month, I thought for sure he was going to be reunited with his birth mom, like within the first month. Like I thought he would be a very short-term placement just based on like what I saw and what I heard like the first month he was with me. Like I didn't have all the information yet, but just the bits and pieces I got and like how like the first few visitations went, like it just seemed like his bio parents had it together and were going to be like having him right back, like no big deal. And then things like really drastically changed from that. You know, obviously, eventually his case ended up going towards adoption. I am adopting him this summer, if you haven't heard. So it is kind of crazy how much like cases can change, and that can be a bunch of different reasons. You know, it could be that the bio parents aren't following their case plan. Usually bio parents have like a case they have to follow. Maybe they have to go to rehab. Maybe they have to get a house. Maybe they need to get a job. Whatever it is that they're working towards. And if they're not working towards that and they're not coming to see their child or they're not making any like type of strides to try to get their child back, then that's when cases can kind of take a turn more towards adoption. And even then, they'll still look for family members and try to keep the child within the family when possible. And I can honestly say once again that my caseworkers worked really, really hard to try to find other family members for him. And even though it was really hard for me, there was a part of me that hoped that for him too, because I know it's easier growing up in a family who knows your culture and who looks like you and like is related to you by blood. And you know that's an important thing if you can preserve that. But definitely towards the end of the case, when that was no longer going to be the case, and of course he'd been with me for over a year at that point and was old enough to talk and know me, and it would be more traumatic for him to move anywhere else. I am absolutely 100% glad that he ended up where he is now. It's where he was meant to be. But I will just say, like, your case can start out looking one way and completely change over the course of a year. So definitely you can expect that. Kind of going along with that, my third thing is going to be an emotional roller coaster. Like, I feel like the first, 3 days I had him, I felt like I was just babysitting. And then, like, by the third day, it was like, oh, no, I feel like I gave birth to this child. Like, I feel like he's mine already. Like, and so your emotions just, they change so much. Like you'll go from kind of feeling like the child's just a stranger in your home to, you know, loving them as if you had given birth to them yourself, and, you know, all the ups and downs, like as you find more about their case and things happen, like the emotions you feel in foster care are just crazy. And I feel like sometimes you have to just almost push them away a little bit, which sounds sad, not the children, but the emotions. Just because it's so much, like it's so hard to think about the child being taken from you or, just the possibilities of things. Sometimes it's just really hard to think. And I've said this before, but like even now I feel like I can't fully even be happy or joyful about the adoption until like the actual day gets here, just because there's always like that little voice in the back of your head that's like, what if something happens? So just, be prepared for the emotional roller coaster that is foster care. All right, the fourth thing I want to talk about is adoption. So when I got into foster care, I heard so many stories of people who had fostered for like 5, 10 years with the hope of adopting, but none of the cases ever went to adoption. And I can say that that's definitely something that happens for sure. A lot of the time, the goal of foster care, like I said, is to reunite with either the bio parents or another family member. But I'll also say that it's also just as possible for your first case to become an adoptive placement, because that's what happened to me. I started fostering with the intent to foster for several years and then adopt eventually, because I didn't think it would happen quickly. But my first placement ended up being the one that became adoptable, and of course I went to adopt him. So it worked out wonderfully, but just know that if you think adoption is going to come later down the road, it might come sooner than you think. All right, so my fifth thing is going to be the drop-off. When you first get a call for a placement, a lot of times you get like 10, 30-minute warning, and they drop this kid off at your door. Now, especially as a first-time parent and a first-time foster parent, I honestly expected the drop-off to be a little bit more like, I don't know, structured or something, because honestly, literally what happened is an emergency caseworker who was it was on the weekend, and he was on work for the weekend, and he literally dropped off my little baby boy, like 30 minutes warning to my house with nothing but a onesie. And that's just like crazy to me. And like he literally had me sign a piece of paper and then just like left. And I don't know, I kind of expected him to ask me more questions or like look around my house more. And I mean, of course I was already licensed and they'd already checked all that stuff out, but I don't know, I just kind of expected it to be a little bit more involved. And it was literally just like, here's a kid, sign the paper, bye. Like it felt like a UPS drop off almost, which is horrible to say, I know, but that's kind of what it felt like. It was very strange to me. Like just here's a kid in a onesie and nothing else, and good luck. And of course, that's why they do all the training and the prep work and everything ahead of time. But I will say that was a surprise for me. I did expect that to be like a little bit different than it was. And I'm sure that varies too, like if your case is on the weekend or the middle of the night, or what kind of caseworker you have, or maybe how they feel about you. But that was my experience at least, and it was interesting. So my sixth thing is going to be like dealing with like pediatricians and daycares. So when you have a child in your home from foster care, they're most likely going to be on like Medicare or Medicaid. Sorry, for like kids, for like through the state, they get the Medicaid. And so you kind of have to like work with pediatricians that are only in that network. And that can be kind of difficult, like A, to find, and then B, to find like a good one. Like the first pediatrician we worked with was awful. Oh my gosh, it was such a horrible experience. And in my brain, I thought, oh my gosh, is this how like all like state pediatricians are? And it definitely wasn't. So definitely do not stay with a bad pediatrician. If you don't like your pediatrician, like definitely change. I waited way too long to change, and now we have a wonderful pediatrician, and I wish I had changed earlier. But that's like definitely something, like working with a pediatrician, and like also like finding a daycare that like accepts like the state subsidies if you're in a state that pays for daycare. Like both of those, like the first week was like really rough. Like I didn't have his social security number yet. I didn't have any of like the documents I needed yet. And it was really hard to like navigate all that. And like the first week you have so many doctor's appointments you have to go to. And I would just say like working with those was definitely like an adjustment period. And I definitely recommend like doing your research and getting as much of that done on the front end for sure. I did talk a little bit more in depth about like my first 2 weeks as a foster parent and like the video I made about that. So you can check that out on my channel if you're interested. But that's just something that surprised me, like kind of how difficult that was. And also just like paying out of pocket. That's like my seventh thing actually. It's just the amount of money, especially up front, that like you spend on your foster children, at least I did, is a lot. So I definitely recommend like having a savings like set aside for that. Because like I said, my little man came to me in nothing but a onesie. And I had a couple things stockpiled, but I for sure had to go out and buy like an entire wardrobe for his age, and he was a baby, so like they like grow every like week. So there was a lot of clothing expenses. Formula, oh my God. People talk about diapers, man. Formula is so expensive. Like I wish that like there was a way to breastfeed, but formula, yeah, it's expensive. So formula, diapers, all like the baby essentials and toys and things. And of course, you're going to be head over heels for these kids, hopefully. So you're going to want to buy them lots of things and all kinds of stuff. And of course, you can definitely be minimalist and more budget friendly if you want to, but I definitely, as a first-time mom, spent a lot, and I was glad that I had a savings to help me with that. So I do recommend preparing for some expenses up front. And even our first few weeks of daycare, I had to pay out front because it takes a while to get like all the state stuff set up. So just be prepared for some upfront expenses, I guess. Okay, my next thing is siblings. And this is one of those things that I think a lot of people don't think about, especially if they're only taking one child into their home. A lot of times you can get placed with a child, whether a baby or older child, doesn't matter. If you get placed with a child, a lot of times they can have a sibling out there somewhere. And that can cause a child to be removed from your home to be placed with a sibling, or them wanting to place a sibling with you. And another thing that can happen is the bio mom could get pregnant during the case, like the length of the case. And that's just all things to like consider, like, what are you going to do if they end up having a sibling? Are you going to be open to the sibling? If the mom gets pregnant and that child goes back into the system, do you want to have that child too later? Especially if you adopted the first child, like that's something you have to think about. And even like even like after your child's adopted, if their sibling, like later down the road, their parents have another kid and they come into foster care, are you going to want to take that sibling too because you had the first one? Like these are like things that like you don't always think about like on the front end. And that's something that definitely kind of came up at the end of our case. So just keep in mind that that's something that can kind of happen to think about for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is like the looks and the comments, guys, especially if you're fostering like a child who's a different race or ethnicity than you are. Like the comments I get sometimes is a little bit crazy. It's all good meaning usually, but you'll get the like, is he yours? Or is he adopted, or are you his nanny? Like, it's really kind of rude, but people usually mean well and they're just curious. And it can be a great opportunity to educate someone about foster care, or you can just say, yeah, they're mine, or, it's up to you. But definitely be prepared to have some comments, both from people you don't know and people you do know. I swear going to the grocery store, every time I get a comment, doesn't matter. And I have had a couple encounters that were a little bit more serious than that. I had one person who accused me of kidnapping my child just because we didn't look alike. So just, be prepared. People are going to do some stupid things, especially right now with everything horrible that's going on right now in the world. There's a lot of racial tensions, especially in the US. So just be prepared that that's something you might encounter. The next thing I want to talk about is like life stuff. I feel like especially if you're a first-time parent, there's like a lot of like things in life that are going to change for you more than you expect. Like you kind of think in your head how it's going to be, but like until you're actually there, like you don't realize like, oh yeah, it's going to like, I can't just go to the movies, or oh my gosh, I want ice cream. I can't just run to CVS at like 11 o'clock because the baby's asleep and no one else is here. And like these are the things you have to think about, especially as a single foster parent, which I was at the beginning. Your life's going to change a lot, and you're going to have a lot of friends who maybe don't have kids who aren't going to want to go to the playground with you, or, they're going to want to go do whatever y'all usually do. And, maybe they don't want you to bring the baby along, or, and I'm not saying maybe that means you need to get new friends, but I'm just letting you know that like that's definitely like something that will change. You aren't going to be doing the same things you used to do, and a lot of the things you like to do are going to be harder, even like working out, or like I said, grocery shopping at night, or these kinds of things. It's going to change your life a lot, and it's totally worth it in my opinion, but I think it's good on the front end to be like aware of like how things are going to change and maybe put some stuff in place to like get you prepared for that. Another thing I want to talk about, kind of going back to the caseworkers. They don't come around as often as you think they would. They definitely like follow like state guidelines and all of that. But it's like once a month coming over to your house, and that's like just not that much, like once every like 30 days. Occasionally they might have like an unannounced visit or something, but for the most part, like it's not like they're in your business all the time. Like I feel like that's another misconception, at least in my case with foster care, that people are like always in your business. And it's really not that bad. And like they're so nice and like kind, like I don't even mind when they come visit. It's just like, hey, like come on in, like how's it going? They're only there for like 15 minutes usually, and it's just not a big of a deal. So I think if you're expecting like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have social workers at my door every day, like that's not how it works. They've got so many other families, so unless you're giving them a reason to like worry about you, It's just not that big a deal. So that's something that kind of surprised me a little bit. I was kind of expecting to be a little bit more in my life all the time, and it actually really hasn't been that bad. They've definitely been there when I needed them or reached out to them, but other than that, like I said, they usually just come by for like the required visit and that's it. So not bad at all. The next thing, and might surprise some of you guys, but honestly, there were so many times that I would forget that my son was a foster child. And I know that sounds so weird, but like until someone made a comment or like my caseworker messaged me or something, like I'd be like, oh yeah. Because life just gets so normal, like if you fall into that routine, you love that child, they love you, and it feels normal. It feels like you gave birth to them, like you forget that you look different or that you aren't the same DNA, like you just forget, and that sounds so weird, but like I really did, like all the time, like someone would message me, I'd be like, oh yeah, like right, like we're in a case right now, like I forget, like we're not at the end of it yet. And I know that sounds so silly, but like that truly does happen, like you just get into that normal like routine and it feels normal. So that's something that kind of surprised me a little bit. The next thing I want to talk about, and this kind of contradicts what I said earlier about people not being in your business, but I will say if you go through any big major life changes while you're a foster parent, and this can be like you moved, you have a serious relationship now, you've got a dog, like anything like that, like you do have to communicate that stuff like to your caseworkers. Like they need to like make sure the dog's up to date and like, it's going to be safe around the child. They need to get your new home like foster care ready and like licensed and everything. If you have a new relationship, they need to get them on like the frequent visitor form. Like there's just like some things like that. It's just basically formalities, and it's totally fine for you to do those things, but you definitely have to like involve them in those big decisions. It kind of reminds me of like being a teenager and like having to get my parents' permission to like go to a sleepover or something. Like it's kind of one of those things that if you're going to go on vacation or you're going to like, have some big house renovation, like you kind of have to include them in those kinds of decisions, or at least like let them know what's happening, so you can make sure that you're following like all the guidelines. So just be prepared if you're expecting any kind of changes like that. That's something to consider. And I can't even look on the last part of my list. Oh yeah. Okay, pictures, guys. So y'all probably noticed from my channel, I don't show any pictures or videos generally of my foster love because we're not allowed to. Well, I won't say we're not allowed to. It's not illegal per se, at least where I am. It is, I think, in some areas. But it's just kind of like a formality or like, I don't know, recommended, I guess, not to show your foster child's face just for their protection. And so, family members can't find out who you are or where you are and like harass you or anything. Like there's definitely been some horror stories like that. So just for his privacy and your safety, they recommend you not sharing videos and photos. As things get closer to adoption, I'm a little bit more like lenient on that. Like if it's kind of a faraway photo or like something, I'm like, But for the most part, definitely keep in mind your child's safety and privacy and, like I said, the guidelines and regulations of your state and agency, that you may not be able to do that. And that was something that was, I won't say it was a surprise because I was kind of aware of it, but I guess what was a surprise is how much like I would hate it. Like I just hate that I can't share his face and his laugh and everything like with you guys and like with family members and friends, and that part just kind of sucks a little bit, but it's not forever, and that's okay. And the very last thing is just like the love you're gonna feel for your kiddos. Obviously I can only speak from my personal experience, but I can't imagine raising any child for a year or longer and not being entirely in love with them. And that can sometimes lead to a lot of heartbreak if they get reunited, but it can also lead to a lifelong of love. So just know, like I said, it's that roller coaster of emotions you're going to experience with foster care. So that is my 15 things that kind of surprised me about foster care in my very first year of fostering. Let me know in the comments below if you have anything that surprised you if you're already a foster parent, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.